Welcome to Catalyzing Innovation's podcast series, where exceptional global innovators across sectors share best practices to maximize creativity and practical secrets for good implementation. Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to be interviewing Maggy Nyamumbo today. She's innovating and combining social impact with fintech through her very unique coffee company. Her journey is extremely inspiring as she's come full circle, growing up on a coffee farm in Kenya, attending Harvard Business School, London School of Economics, working on Wall Street, and now she's the founder and CEO of a company that's giving back to female coffee farmers in Africa through an innovative use of cryptocurrency. Maggy, welcome, and thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me, Michelle.
So can you share a little bit more about your background and career journey? It's so interesting, and it must be extremely gratifying for you the way you've come full circle using your fabulous education and work experience to help female farmers in Kenya.
Yeah, so I grew up on a coffee farm in Kenya, and so everything that goes into getting coffee from the farm. And back then we just used to send the coffee and it went abroad. And when I moved to the US and I was drinking coffee every day, to stay awake and be productive. And even when I was working on Wall Street, I'd be in the office, going home at 5 a.m., seeing the sun. And coffee is kind of how I kept productive. And so when I started dabbling a little bit into the New York coffee scene and learning about essentially how in the last decade, since the 2000s, the coffee industry had really evolved from a commodity product into really a specialty product. And so there was demand for, coffee that was, ethically and sustainably grown and that was delicious. And Kenya, where I grew up, has coffee that's, essentially considered the best in the world. It's analogous to French wine. But I remember that even though we were paying $5 for a cup of coffee, the farmers were still making 10, 20 cents a pound, which is the same price they made in the 60s. So there hadn't been a way for sort of the benefits and the growth of specialty coffee for those benefits to flow back to the farmers. And especially since a lot of the farm work, about 90% of farm labor is shouldered by women. And so as I thought about the value chain and the supply chain and how we can get money back into the hands of women, for me, fintech has been one of the ways that we've seen, women essentially be able to participate in the financial world, especially unbanked women. So back in Kenya, the way that the women helped themselves, especially the one banked, they were able to form groups and essentially. It's called table banking because you have money in a pot and it goes around a table. And so when I thought about how can I affect these women directly, using coffee as a tool to empower the women was something that came to me really fast. And it was such a full circle moment for me to go back to my childhood and the coffee that I saw, growing up. I used to pick the berries and be able to bring all that coffee directly to consumers and have consumers have a relationship directly with the coffee drinkers.
How did you identify the idea and then think of using cryptocurrency to return money, in a very, very innovative way? There's so much that went into that, just the technology on the packaging, and then working with Kenya to be able to receive the funds and distribute the funds. And then the social impact that you described to me was women were not used to being paid directly, and how you managed to work that out. I feel like there were so many, I don't know if obstacles is the right word, but challenges that you were able to figure out that was amazing.
Yeah, so the biggest obstacle in the coffee industry, because it's such a long supply chain, about 15 to 20 people touch the coffee from the farm to cup. And with that comes a lot of opaqueness and lack of transparency. So what we thought technology would help is to open up that the chain so that everyone can really see the movement of money around. And so what blockchain really helped was to be able to have a record where people can actually see the movement But in particular, I think for me, when people think about, cryptocurrency, they're thinking of Bitcoin and the price. But I think one of the most impactful applications of it is the idea of microtransactions. So currently, when you send money abroad, it costs a lot. The transaction costs are too high. So that's why we can't really do small transactions, internationally. But because cryptocurrency is not tied to a border, it introduced the idea that, look, you can actually send 10 cents, 20 cents more cost effectively across borders. So that was really what the cryptocurrency enabled that, fiat money wasn't able to do. And so from a social impact standpoint, traditionally, the farmland in Kenya is owned, and in many African countries, is owned by the male member of the household. So then in a sense, the payments that come from coffee are tied to the male member of the household, and the male member essentially controls that. So the female member of the household, which is sort of the women who actually do the work, sometimes are not able to access those funds, even though they're the ones who really run the households. And so for us, because the coffee prices, again, in the market, they're determined in New York by the New York commodity markets, are actually below cost of production. So the money then doesn't actually support what it takes to grow coffee. So we're thinking of like, how can we get consumers? So it's a similar concept to tipping, right? We tip, we tip Uber drivers or delivery drivers, or to the tipping culture in the US is something we're used to when we're dealing with workers where the minimum wage or the wage that they're earning is below living costs. So it was just really applying that concept to an international business. And so the women in particular, they already had a system that they were organized around of how they moved money. So for us, we really wanted to come in and fit into an existing structure. So not disrupt how things were going and just like change and tell them how best to do things. It was essentially, how do we fit in into an existing system and make it more impactful? So that was our approach. And the advantage is that I knew that system very intimately, but my mom, my aunts, my grandparents were part of that system, so I intimately understood it. And I was coming at it from a sort of a business mind of, how can we, this system that has worked for ages for these women, how can we add fuel to the fire, as opposed to coming in and kind of introducing something foreign to them.
It's fantastic, really. So can you also explain a little bit about the Kahawa 1893 coffee line? What's behind the name? What does Kahawa mean? How did you pick 1893? And also, can you explain the product choices that you made? Because I think you have coffee from Ethiopia and some other countries. So if you can explain a little bit about the product line, and then tell listeners where they can find it at retail and on your website.
Yeah, so Kahawa means coffee in Swahili. And we were very intentional in picking the name. We wanted to pick a name that was in a language that's spoken in Africa. Swahili is the official language of Kenya, and it's essentially a language that's spoken in a lot of parts of Africa. And so we wanted that name to be representative of the sort of African origins of coffee. Coffee is originally from Ethiopia, which is right next door to Kenya. That's where coffee originated. And 1893 is when coffee was first commercially grown in Kenya. And we wanted to celebrate that rich history. So we have coffee originating in Ethiopia, goes to the Middle East, goes to Europe, comes to Latin America, and then eventually finds its way back to East Africa. So for us, we wanted to be able to celebrate that rich history of coffee and Africa's role in that. And continue the tradition of producing, delicious coffee for the world. And our lineup is representative of that. So we want to celebrate African coffees because they're known for very, very distinct flavors. So Ethiopian coffee is known for its, natural processing method, which is a method that they've been processing since they discovered coffee. They've been processing it that way. So that's something that we really want to celebrate and share with the world. Kenya has its own special processing method. It's called double fermentation. It's a very distinct method, and it's only done in Kenya. So that's something we wanted to celebrate. And so we offer coffee from different countries in Africa, but we also make blends. We have a medium blend and a dark blend. And for us, it's about essentially welcoming people into the specialty coffee tent. So specialty coffee can sometimes be very intimidating to people that are new to it, because it's traditionally been marketed in a very elitist way, actually. It's until recently that specialty coffee has started to be democratized, where we're seeing more, coffee being marketed to a broader audience. And so for us, we want to make coffees that are delicious, approachable, and really welcome more people into enjoying high quality coffee without all the trappings of colonialism and other sort of things that have surrounded coffee traditionally. And that's one of the reasons we actually introduced our single serve coffee. It's a coffee in a tea bag, and you do not need any fancy equipment to brew it. You just need hot water, and you brew it like tea. And the background of why I came up with a product was, when I started specialty coffee, people around me, my friends, were actually unfamiliar with how coffee is prepared. So I remember gifting a friend of mine a whole bean bag of coffee, and then I went over to the place to make it. And then they were actually about to brew the coffee as whole bean before grinding it. They were unfamiliar with how to prepare coffee. And so it struck me that there was a gap in education about how to prepare coffee, and the coffee in a tea bag is a really easy way for me to share coffee. I've brought it back to farmers in Kenya. Farmers have been able to enjoy their coffee in a very convenient way, in a way that they wouldn't if they had to learn how to prepare it, and with all the equipment that you need. You need a grinder, you need a pour over. So the coffee in a tea bag, I think, to me, has done more to be able to share high quality coffee with a larger audience that traditionally doesn't have the training to be able to prepare coffee in a more traditional way.
Interesting. That's such an innovative packaging idea. So, and the quality of a cup of coffee is pretty good from a bag, from what we call it.
It's very good. It's very close to a pour over. It's almost like a cross between a pour over and a French press. When you think about a coffee bag, or when you think about how you prepare coffee in a French press, right? You take the grounds, pour them in, and then you pour water and you steep it for about 4 minutes. And then you filter it. So all we've done with a coffee bag is almost put in a filter inside of a French press. So then you already have a filter inbuilt. And essentially the material, it took a lot of innovation to get a material that was compostable. So the idea was, if we're gonna prepare a single serve method of coffee, and coffee already has a waste problem with the K-cups and aluminum. So there's a lot of waste around sort of one-time usage of coffee. We wanted something that was guilt-free. So it's everything's compostable. You throw it in a compost and you can forget about it. And so the material was very important, to have something compostable, but also to have something that was high quality. So because this is specialty coffee, we wanted to make sure we could replicate your corner store experience. And so in the coffee, we actually put in a larger amount of coffee. So we put in about 50% more coffee than you have in a K-cup. So you are actually able to get the flavor. So there's actually more coffee in there, similar to what you would use for a single cup pour over. So it's a combination of the material, where you want it to be essentially not exactly like a tea bag, but also essentially when you think about like a tea bag, right? Because tea is not too fine, it can't escape. But coffee is very complex because of the fine grinds, they can escape the material. So you need a material that can allow water to come in, but also trap the grounds. So that was really what it took to be able to produce something that is porous enough for water, but doesn't let the grinds out.
Wow.
But it works really well. People are always surprised when they try it, because they're like, oh, wow, I didn't know this was possible. Why hasn't this been done before? But I mean, even at home now, sometimes when I'm busy in the morning, that's all I have. And it's really good for travel if you're going, somewhere, or if you're in an office environment. So it's a very versatile product. and it's my favorite way of sharing coffee because I know that when I share that coffee with you and you just put hot water, you're gonna get a desired result. Because part of the difference between like coffee and wine is wine comes ready to drink, it's in the final form. But coffee, even the highest quality coffee, the best coffee, the last step still can introduce a different taste, introduces something that can change the final product. So because there's a lot of steps. And so this is as closest to the final product as possible. And not many people can mess with just adding hot water. There isn't much to mess there. So
Wow.
I really love sharing that product.
So did you work with like chemists in the US, or like what kind of people like experimented with you, or like looking at lots of different materials? It must have been kind of an iterative process, just the
So we
development of it.
actually, it's funny when this idea came to me and I started Googling just to, find out, who's doing this, has this been done before? And I actually lapped out and I found a company in California that was starting to innovate with that material. And I reached out to them, and they were very, very excited about the idea. So it essentially was me thinking about it and starting to do a search, a Google search, and then finding someone in California that was, starting to develop that material. So
Oh, that's very nice. Also, unfortunately, this is audio, so people can't see your bag, but your bag is beautiful. And maybe
yeah.
you could explain the choices of the graphics, because I think it's a very happy, cheerful package, but it also harkens back to, I think, African heritage.
Oh, you mean the packaging, the coffee packaging?
Yeah, yes, excuse me, the bag for the bags. There, it's
Oh,
just really cheerful and happy and fun and different looking for a coffee package.
oh, cool. Thank you. So we were actually thinking about how we wanted to present the coffee. We thought that we wanted to communicate this again, approachable, fun, cheerful, and for me, when I describe it in one or two sentences, it's African, the African safari wildlife, which is I'm from Kenya, and we have a lot of like safari that meets sort of the African landscape. So the cheerful African landscape meets the culture. In Africa, we have a lot of colorful patterns. If you look at like our clothing and everything, we have these colorful patterns, and we wanted to kind of bring that on a package, but also reflect the African landscape that's very it's also very, very rich in diverse in terms of plants, in terms of fertility. So it was just wanted to reflect sort of all the African attributes that we like onto our packaging so that when someone saw it, they could be transported back to Africa.
Yeah, no, I love it. And it's so giftable. It's such a nice gift to give to somebody because it looks so pretty.
Okay.
What can you talk a little bit about your vision for the future, for the product line, and what is the scope of what you're hoping to accomplish if you look ahead? Are you thinking of adding more items from more different countries in Africa, getting more farmers to participate where you are, increasing awareness more broadly for fair pay for farmers in growing countries? Just a little bit about your long-term vision.
Yeah, so we are, our first thing is we want to grow our distribution. So the more distribution we have, the more farmers we can sort of invite into the program. And so we're excited that we'll be available in more places in retail. We just partnered with a big box retailer. We'll be launching this spring. So Kahawa will be more readily available in retail format. So as we expand our retail distribution, we'll be able to essentially offer more coffees from more countries. So partner with more farmers. And in particular, what I'm very, very excited about is, as you know, for me, giving women farmers access to markets is one of the reasons I started Kahawa. So as we have more distribution, I want to make sure that any woman farmer coffee has a market. So I want to reach out to more farmers, and I want to make sure that all the coffee that we serve is going to be from majority women-owned farms. And so I want to make sure that every woman that's farming coffee around the world, from Africa and hopefully soon in Latin America, has a market for their product at the right price. So that's one thing I'm very passionate about. The other thing I'm passionate about is essentially dignity for farmers, and having farmers essentially participate in the coffee supply chain on their own terms. So when we think about other industries like wine, the producers are very valued. They're celebrated. When you look at a wine bottle, it's gonna or a cheese packet. It's gonna tell you the farm it came from. It's gonna tell you the storied history of the estate and the farmer and their skill set. And we don't see that much with coffee. In coffee, a lot of the glory rests on the roaster and how they roasted the coffee. So one of the things I really want to shift from a social standpoint is celebrating the work that the farmers do, because they actually prepare the coffee. Whatever we taste in the coffee, all that happens at the farm level with the fermentation. So I really want to bring some of that light to light, and celebrate the work that farmers do as artists, as creators. So that's something I'm very, very passionate about as we grow.
No, that's wonderful. So that involves a lot of storytelling. And I don't know, are you thinking of producing any videos, or what's the best way to get the story out?
It's going to be videos. So that's a medium that so I want to invest more in, where we can tell stories from the farm, stories of production. And I actually just met a very, very passionate coffee. He's actually a college student who started a coffee company in college. And he's very passionate about videos, and he's going to be producing videos for us on YouTube. So I'm very excited to, it's something I've been passionate about. I haven't had bandwidth to do it, but as we grow and we have sort of more people, that's something I want to invest in, to be able to tell the stories, again, from the viewpoint of a producer.
No, I love what you're doing. It's wonderful on so many different levels. So, are there any lessons that you have for small companies and large regarding how they can have the greatest social impact? I know it's a very general question, but I know for a fact that more and more brands are having the main focus of their product line being brand purpose and finding a real purpose. You clearly have some brands are trying to find a purpose, but you're completely built on purpose. But are there any lessons that you have? I know authenticity is really important.
Yeah.
Really giving back to people along the supply chain. But are there any lessons that you have generally that you can share?
Yeah, I was gonna say, just being authentic as much as you can, and sometimes that comes from companies giving voices to people that they work with. Sort of, let's say you have suppliers or farmers that you work with, giving them the voice, right? Don't speak on their behalf, let them speak, right? That's one way where you can engage with them. And then also meeting them where they are. Because sometimes brands might, do something that is good for PR, but doesn't have the impact on the ground, or doesn't essentially have the impact that they intended. And so that's why sometimes listening to communities that you're partnering with, listening to what's most important to them, and then essentially helping them get there without necessarily making assumptions or sort of gravitating towards simple solutions. Sometimes solutions that make a difference on the ground are complex because you're fitting into a complex political and social situations, and they can feel overwhelming at first. And that's why I think having local partners for us, what's been useful is because we're from the ground, we have people on the ground, we understand the situation. So I think for brands, it's finding partners on the ground, in communities where they are working or sourcing from, and just really having those partners lead the way. So I'll give you an example of something that in the coffee industry, it seems small at first, but then when you think about it, you're like, oh, that makes sense. So for example, brands will fly in international photographers to photograph the farmer on the farm instead of like using a local photographer, right? So it's small things like those where you're thinking, okay, I want to tell a story, but I don't need to fly someone from LA to come and take photos of farmers. And also, do I need their permission? Am I preserving their dignity? So there's a lot of things that when you work with local partnerships, those things come embedded because they understand the local context. And it really goes further because you not only are developing this one supplier, but you're benefiting a greater part of the economy. You're hiring a local photographer, you're hiring, you're essentially benefiting a larger part of the economy. So that's one. And then I think the second thing is obviously making sure that your partners feel valued and they're fairly rewarded as well. So that's one of the things that takes intention to reward both talent and labor fairly. So taking into consideration, okay, do I have a predominantly women workforce? Are there gaps in how they're compensated? Can I be intentional about it? So I think sometimes it's when it's not looked at intentionally, it cannot be addressed. So I think just being intentional and being able to look at blind spots is another way to address any inequities.
That's really great. Super helpful. So can you share with the listeners how they can get in touch with you if they would like to, and how they can find the products?
Yeah, so we're pretty active on social media. Our tagline is, or our handle is at kahawa1893.com. That's KAHAWA1893. And you can message us there if you want to reach us. On our website, which is kahawa1893.com as well. You can reach us there as well. We have a chat box. You can email us at hello@kahawa1893.com. In terms of our product, the website is probably the easiest place to find us currently. So if you order online, we roast and ship all the product out fresh weekly. So it's at your door within 2 to 3 days. Sometimes actually when it arrives at your doorstep, it's too fresh. So normally we ask people to wait a week before they brew their coffee because that's how fresh it is. And then soon we'll be available, in more retail stores across the country.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. You're so inspiring. I just love your can-do spirit, your ability to identify an opportunity or idea and solve whatever problems get in the way. And I think you're just amazing. And I love what you're doing. So, and I'm very excited about, all the retail distribution that you're gaining. And I think this is going to become a big brand and really have meaningful impact. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for having me. And definitely I'm so excited for what's in store and for having a larger platform to make even larger impact.